Hello, everyone. Yeah, we're right here tonight, obviously, to talk about Charles Watson's psychiatry report again. I'm going to go into the bits tonight where they say why they declared him insane or not, because a couple of them say he wasn't insane. So, yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. And I'm going to read a tiny bit of his trial transcript. And I tried to think about ways to do it, because I don't need to read out too much of it, really, because I don't need to over-explain it. Like, people who want more detail can read the report themselves. But I'll just sort of tell you what you need to know to understand how he got declared insane, basically, because he was the only one of all the Manson defendants that got actually declared insane and pled insanity at his trial. And it still didn't work. He still got sentenced to death. Anyway, didn't it? But then the death penalty got overturned. That's why they're all still alive. So yeah, hi everyone. And I'll put the chapters in the description. So if you want to skip straight to where we start, you can do that. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the like button on the chat on the video, because that all helps with the algorithm. Sorry, yeah, just look at the chat for a minute. Yeah, and this is the first time I'm not going out on Facebook at the same time as well. So hopefully the people on Facebook will get they have to come to YouTube now. The link's in the event page of Facebook. Hopefully people will work it out and are here now. But yeah, if you haven't got a YouTube account, you have to create one to be able to chat, don't you, on YouTube? So yeah, hopefully people are working that out. And there's quite a lot to read out, but they're only short segments. But I'll get into it pretty quickly, so we're not here all night. Yeah. There's the sound off. No, I don't know why. It's probably my internet connection or something. Yeah. Yeah, you only watch on YouTube. You're trained well. I think the chat is better on YouTube. The way you chat on Facebook live streams, you're just leaving comments, so it gets really confusing. Not as good as the chat in the YouTube live streams, I don't think. Yeah, right. I think I'll start reading straight away, yeah, because I'll start out by telling you how he was behaving when he was in Texas, because it's pretty clear. I don't have to explain it to you very much why he starts to go downhill after they move him to California, if you read how he was coping in Texas, basically. Right. And the witnesses: Robert F. King, November 1969, the Sheriff's Department, Collis County and Sorting Jailer, the day jailer. And the prisoner is Charles Denton Watson, in custody for 9 months. His visitors were his mother and father, maybe twice a week. He has a TV in cell had it for 5 months, a portable radio and a record player, and a small styrofoam cool box. Mother bought him cottage cheese, fruit, dietary food, prune juice, and grape juice. Civilian clothes: she would bring in clean clothes, did the laundry for him, and he used his top bunk for a storage bunk. And his trousers hung over a string clothesline, and that's what he would keep them on, 4 feet long. They're up there neat. Toilet and shower, TV. He would turn the sound down on it, so he would just have the TV on with the sound down. And there were times, but the pictures would be showing, he was usually lying on the bunk. Yes, he did have newspapers, US News and Life, periodical type, the Morning News and the Times, Herald, Dallas, the Farmersville's paper on a Sunday. He would usually ask for the McKinney newspaper. He stayed cleanly shaven most of the time, occasionally a 2-day growth of beard. He normally kept on clean clothes most of the time, changed shirts twice a day possibly. Trousers always looked neat on him, and he would change them regularly. Brown and a green pair with white stripes. He would flush the toilet? Yes. Purchases he would request? Yes, cottage cheese or maybe a small jar of honey, which he did eat. Did he eat meat? Not that I recall. No, he would just tell us what he wanted. He would discuss football games. He was aware of the weather? Yes. Well, he expressed himself like a normal, well-educated person. Probably takes showers more often than any of the rest of the prisoners. When it was hot, maybe twice a day. Right, so, and that behaviour thing goes on to say that when they was like cleaning outside his cell, he would ask for the mop and he would mop his own cell and stuff like that. So he was functioning quite normally. And his mum was doing his laundry for him and bringing him in food And he had a record player in his cell and everything. So he was doing all right when he was in jail in Texas. And his brother is actually a cop, I think, as well. So like, and all this sort of stuff. His family are in law enforcement in Texas. So he was treated really well when he was in Texas, basically. And yeah, that's it. I can't believe his mum was allowed to do his laundry for him. And yeah, and he used his top bunk as a storage bunk. And he had a clothesline in his cell with his trousers hung over it. So yeah, he was doing all right. And for 9 months, that was how he was. And then they moved him to California. Right. So it's from the New Jail Infirmary. And this is from 9/12/70. So this is when his trial just starts. We'll get to the transcript in a minute. And when his trial first starts, he's talking to them normally. He's actually quite normal. He denies any recent history of illness, denies taking medication of any type. No medical complaints. No need for him to be seen by a doctor. Weight 118 pounds, which is low for a bloke of his age and height. 9/14/70, unchanged. And then suddenly on the 25th, something happens. 1700, inmate non-communicative at this time. Deputy states inmate's behaviour has been abnormal. Has been placing his hands in the opening cell gate in an apparent attempt at self-harm. No visible signs of injury noted. Small scratch noted, tip of the third digit. Admit to 7,000 for close observation. And they take his pulse and his respiration and all that. Placed in full restraints for self-protection. Quiet on admission. 1930, complains of right restraint rubbing against the bone on wrist. Checked, not too tight. Has been singing earlier, now quiet. It says they give him Thorazine. Then at 1 a.m. he's quiet. 2:30, he's singing Christmas carols. 6 a.m. slept at intervals. Non-communicative. Refuses to answer personnel. 9 o'clock, seen by Dr. Altalia. Just give you an idea of what the restraints would have looked like. That's the kind of restraints he probably would have been in. Sort of thing. And I'm going to show you what happened in his trial, basically, at this point. So this is actually on the 28th, so 3 days after he starts acting like this and has to be put in restraints, right? Upon the above date, the defendant, appearing in court with his counsel, Carl Ransom. Sorry, just let me get onto the wrong thing for myself. The people being represented by Burton Katz, Deputy District Attorney of Los Angeles County. The following proceedings were had in Department 100 before the Honourable Judge M. Dell, Judge presiding. The court. We will resume at this time with the matters that went over from the morning calendar. I'll call number 305, Charles Watson. I see the defendant is here with his counsel, or at least I should say his tentative counsel, Mr. Ransom, and Mr. Katz is here from the District Attorney's Office. I would like the record to reflect that just prior to our resuming in this court, Mr. Ransom, Mr. Katz, a brief conference in which there was some indication that Mr. Ransom is not going to be representing Mr. Watson. Mr. Ransom. Yes, Your Honour, arrangements to retain me were not made. The court. Very well. I'll relieve you of any further responsibility at this time, although I may ask, I would like you to stand by for just a few minutes, Mr. Ransom, in the event any question arises. Let's see now, Mr. Watson. As I understand it, Mr. Ransom has not been retained to represent you, and you are back in the same state you were in when you first appeared before Mr. Ransom made his appearance. Has any other arrangement been made with any other individual to represent you at this time? The defendant. No response. Were you able to hear what I said? The defendant. No response. The court. I see. Do you find something particularly interesting in my direction, Mr. Watson? The defendant. No response. The court. Let the record reflect that the defendant is standing with his hands on the wooden rail in front of him in the prisoner's section. He is staring intently in the court's direction. He does not respond to any statement or question from the court. Appears to be some sort of game on Mr. Watson's part, which he is free to play if he so desires. I'll relieve you at this time, Mr. Ransom. You are free to leave if you wish to do so. I anticipate that the public defender will declare a conflict of interest, and they just waffle on a bit about his how can they work out who's going to represent him if he won't say anything, and so they hold it over to October the 8th. Right, and if we go back to his little behaviour chart here, suddenly it gets worse, right? This is 9/30 of 1970, so 30th of October. Apparently was violent, hit his head and body, 30th of September, sorry. Hit his head and body against the wall, mentally disorientated, head and back systems, no evidence of injury. And that headgear thing, that's what comes up if you search head and back, this head thing. Basically, that's what they use then. Right, 10/2/70. So this is the 2nd of October now. Non-communication. Patient has occasional smile, calmer today. 5th of the 10th, 70. 10/5/70. Transfer to custody care. Appears calmer, cooperative, no complaints at present. Right, and October the 7th, and they make a long speech about who's going to represent him now, and they appoint Burbrick, the guy that he has forevermore after this. Right, and they start talking to him. They say, Mr. Watson, do you have any questions about these rights, as I stated then to you? The defendant, no response. Well, the record will indicate that the defendant is facing the court, that he has his hands on the rail in front of him, that he is looking at the court and has an expression that I won't attempt to characterise, but he makes no response to the court's query. Mr. Burbrick, in my judgment, and in as much as you are counsel of record, I won't attempt to overrule your judgment, but it would seem to me that without declaring a doubt as to the defendant's present sanity, it would be in the interest of justice to appoint psychiatrists to examine the defendant and at least report to the court on his ability to understand the nature and purpose of proceedings taken against him, and to cooperate in a rational manner with the counsel in his present defence. Would that be objectionable? No, Your Honour, says the lawyer. If the court would take such action, says the court, that is the very thing I had in mind that afternoon, Your Honour, to ask Your Honour to proceed under sections 5 and 6, as Your Honour has indicated he would, and perhaps appoint 3 doctors. Yes, I would like to do at this time. I will not declare doubt as to the defendant's present sanity. I do not know whether the defendant's present posture is legitimate or not, and I'm not implying that it isn't. At the same time, I've seen no bizarre behaviour. Nothing tangible has been presented to me directly. All that has been presented is the defendant's failure to respond to the inquiries of the court, failure to make any statements to the court. And this is not the same conduct that he exhibited when he first appeared with Mr. Ransom, when he appeared to be fully present and did respond to inquiries made by the court. Pursuant to section 730 of the Evidence Code, then, only I will appoint 3 doctors. I'll name them in just a moment. And he goes on to name the 3 doctors, basically. And I did manage to find the report that they make. So, right, is that making sense to everyone so far? Right, basically, he's doing fine in Texas. Oh, well, wait a sec. No, let me finish up this. Yes, so after he appoints the 3 doctors, yes, his behaviour gets even crazier. So the judge has appointed 3 doctors, and this is now 14th of October. 10:30, he's making loud sounds, ate well, lying quietly, his blood pressure and temperature. Right, 1300 hours, patient exposing himself. 1600 hours, dinner given. Would not eat food, drank coffee, has removed pyjama bottoms, playing with sex organs, refused to speak when spoken to, smiles, no verbal remarks. 17:15, resting. Right, so that's, just let that sink in for a minute. All right, so this is before they move him to the hospital. That's how he's finally acting in hospital. He's not responding to them. He's removed his pyjama bottoms and he's just smiling at them and refusing to respond to them. And he would have been in a situation where every 15 minutes they have to look through the hatch to see what he's doing. They're not just looking at him for fun. So, like, yeah, and every time they look in, he's doing stuff like that. Yeah. This is normal in Texas. Yeah, is this what they do in jail? Yeah. Yeah, that's what they call it. Play with his sex organs. That's how they define it, yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what's happening here. They usually appoint the 3 doctors to determine it, yeah. And he does that. Yeah. But then he gets moved to Atascadero. So is that making sense so far, though? But something appears to happen on the 25th. And I personally wonder if maybe he got hold of drugs again in prison. Either just because they can get drugs in prison. And that was what caused his all his symptoms to come back, basically. Or if he was maybe drugged, like they did to Barbara Hoyt. Yeah, like through the prison system, did they manage to get drugs into whatever Tex was eating or something like that? Or if you want to go into like the heavier, like the CIA deep state involvement, was it the state drugged him to mess him up, to give them an opportunity to get him into a mental hospital? and fill his head with whatever story they want told, sort of thing. It's interesting. Yeah, you agree. It's strange. I think that because he's behaving normally right up until the 25th. And I wonder, if he either just got hold of drugs anyway and took them naturally, or he was drugged, either by criminals to try and stop him from telling the truth, or by the state to try and, brainwash him or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll get into that because he gets taken to UCLA quite a lot as well. It never says in the report that he sees Johnny West, but he does get taken to UCLA. We'll see this, yeah. Yeah, Tex is still alive, isn't he? Yeah. Right, wait a minute. Right, I'll carry on. And this is, I couldn't find the actual report the psychiatrist wrote, but you get someone else's summary of it. This is A.R. Tweed's summary. The three at the top, Seymour Pollack, George Y. Abe, and Marcus Crahan are the three doctors that the judge appointed, and Richard D. Walters is a guy who did a neurological exam of him. Right. According to the summation of the grand jury transcript, as was extracted in the 10/29/70 report of Dr. Crahan, he was described by Susan Atkins as being the leader of the group and acting with precision to cut communication wires at the scene, entered the residence by slitting a screen on a window, then opened the door for his companions, ordering them to go through the house to round up the victims. When they were allegedly brought to the living room, he allegedly stated he was the devil and was there to do the devil's work. He told them they were all going to die and asked them to lie on the floor face down. When Sebring refused, he shot him dead. Previously, he shot Stephen Parent, who was driving away from the residence in a car, killed him with 4 shots. They all participated in the stabbing, except Linda Kay. At the time, Dr. Crahan found him to be legally sane in all respects at the time and commission of the offences and at the time of his initial examination. It would appear to me from the paucity of information available that at the time, the most that could be said would be that one could not really pass judgment or come to any such definite conclusion, since there had been no available history of his drug usage, nor any history, since there was whatsoever, from the man, other than the observation of his activities at the time of the commission of the offences and his behaviour at the time of examination. Thus to say that at the time of commission of the alleged offences, he had the mental capacity to deliberately premeditate and to harbour malice, and that he had the mental capacity to meaningfully and maturely reflect upon the gravity of his completed acts without limit, is being all too embracing, with nothing concrete to go on except the revulsive nature of the crime. So what he basically said there was he didn't have enough information to conclude that he wasn't insane at the time that he first declared him insane. Right, and then the supplemental report 9 days later indicated that the man was then insane and recommended immediate hospitalisation out of fear for his life if this were not accomplished. The findings of Doctors Abe and Pollack indicated that he was legally insane when examined by them. Both of them wisely concluded they could not pass on his mental capacities at the time of the commission of the offence. So basically, the guys, when they first looked at him, said they found him sane, but then later, once they read his drug history and that, said he wasn't sane. Basically, gets confusing there. But yes, that's the psychiatrist that the judge initially hired, and then he gets sent to Atascadero, and from there he gets taken to UCLA a few times and other people. But yes, weirdly, you don't get any reports from anyone who worked at Atascadero. You only get reports from guys from UCLA and sort of independent psychiatrists who just saw him at the jail, basically. We'll get into that in a minute. Yeah. Tex is alive. Well, he's divorced that wife, hasn't he? He's not with that wife anymore, but his children are still alive. He's got a new girlfriend now, apparently, though. Delinda was saying last time she was in here. Yeah, that's it. The wig business. Was that what sent him over the edge, getting into the wig business? Would he have been all right if it weren't for the wigs? Right, because there's so much to read out. Okay, but is that clear to everyone so far? Is everyone following, basically? He's acting normally, and something seems to happen to him on the 25th, and it's my suspicion. But most people would say that's when he decides to start acting crazy. If you think he's totally just malingering, which is the technically the clinical term for faking your symptoms. But I sense that maybe he will, my gut feeling is that he was drugged by someone. Either he just naturally took drugs again, and that triggered all his symptoms to come back, or he was deliberately drugged either by criminals or by the state, basically, to get him put into the mental hospital so they could do what you see next to him, take him to UCLA. But that's just my theory. I don't know that for sure. Most people would probably just believe he just decides to start faking being crazy on that day. Yeah. He wigged out. That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Delinda follows, very closely the text situation. Yeah. No, she's not here now, I don't think. I haven't seen her. I can't remember the account name. It's changed again, hasn't it? I used to think she was Serenity's Calm for a little while. Now she's called something else. When I see her picture, I'll say if she's here. Yeah, let me get on with reading this stuff out so we're not here all night. But yeah, no one's confused about anything that I've said so far, right? You'll get it. He was all right, so he gets moved to California. Then he starts to wig out. And at first, for the first couple of days of his trial, he's all right. And then after the 25th of September, he starts to go weird. And they have to put him in restraints. And then he goes back to court again in October, and he won't talk to the judge again. And that's when they decide to look into his sanity. And that's when he ends up singing Christmas carols and playing with himself and all that sort of stuff. Right. So yeah, everyone seems to get it. And then he gets moved to Atascadero. And the court-appointed psychiatrists, from what the judge just initially said, he was sane, but then once they had more information, declared him insane and said he needed to be taken out of prison and put into the hospital to save his life. Because another thing that I'm not going to bring up much today, but his weight loss was concerning them. The fact he wouldn't eat, they thought he might die because of that. So they were concerned about getting him to eat again, basically. I'm not going to talk so much about that tonight. So let's move on. So this is what Ira M Frank from UCLA concluded about him. This is his conclusion. In my opinion, it was only after returning to Texas, after having stopped taking drugs, that Mr. Watson began to appreciate and understand the enormity of his acts. And it was this realization which led to his profound depression, mutism, and regression in the county jail. And the results of psychological testing, neurological examination, and EEG and mental status examination showed definite evidence of impaired intellectual function, poor coordination, and psychotic thinking, even after being drug-free for more than 1 year. This is especially striking considering his outstanding performance as a high school football and track star and his outstanding academic achievement. Mr. Watson has improved significantly as a patient at Atascadero State Hospital, and I would expect his condition to continue to improve under medical care. I feel that it is extremely unlikely that Mr. Watson will become dangerous again, i.e. that he would once again become involved with the same unique combination of drugs, Manson, and the family. Nonetheless, it is clear that the basic conflicts underlying his susceptibility for such involvement have not yet been resolved, and that a very long period of hospitalization will be necessary. Significant prognostically was his plea: I just want to find out who I really am, to be Charles Watson again. I hope this evaluation will prove helpful to you. Please contact me at, and he gives his phone number, if I can be of further assistance. Sincerely, Ira M Frank. So yeah, luckily he wasn't in charge of whether he got let out or not. He says, yeah, I'm not so sure that he wouldn't become dangerous again. But yeah. But he basically says, yeah, it was only once he got back to Texas, yeah. And again, this is a guy at UCLA. I think this one testifies as a witness at his trial. And John M Suarez as well, this guy. This is what he said, and this is another one from UCLA. By the time of the killings, from his elaborate descriptions, he had become little more than a puppet or robot, highly dependent and frightened of Manson, and very much in need to carry out his commands. This has been achieved by a careful, worked-out drug program and a set of personal and philosophical consultations aimed at brainwashing him out of his original preconceptions and beliefs. After his arrest, from the available reports, it appears that he became acutely decompensated in a catatonic-like state. Currently, his significant residuals of his psychotic and robot-like state. In that, he is very much in limbo between the ideology he has developed with Manson and his pre-existing ideas about reality, what is right, etc. In addition, the psychological testing, the neurological examination, and the electroencephalogram (EEG) reveal widespread central nervous system damage, which is most likely due to the heavy and prolonged ingestion of all the different drugs listed above. It is unusual to see such blatant signs of organic brain damage in people who have been chronic users, and it reflects the severity and diffuseness of the deterioration process within his central nervous system. John M. Suarez. So you say, yeah, it is quite rare. And I won't tell you too much about what organic brain syndrome is, but just to show you a little bit. And it is quite rare for people to get it from drugs. Now, this guy, I might not even bother to read him out, but just because he doesn't say in his report that he's at UCLA when he interviews him, but it's the same date that he's interviewed by two guys at UCLA. So I think this guy must have come in to UCLA. And that's why Tech says he saw 4 doctors at UCLA, because he saw this guy there. But this is all just seems to be assessing whether he's fit to go back to court. This is not about his legal sanity. And this one's really difficult to read. But I just included it to show one of the 4 doctors. I won't bother to read it because there's not really anything about his legal sanity. It's just about whether he's fit to go back to court or not. And this guy is the neurologist, Richard D. Walter, at UCLA, who does a neurological exam of him. So just checks his brain, wasn't doing a psychological test. It is my impression, based on the examination, that Mr. Watson demonstrates at the present time some fairly classical signs of organic brain disease. The evidence for this conclusion is based on the marked slowing in his motor activity, the slight slurring of his speech, mild to moderate difficulty in recent memory, as evidenced by the test story and the test phrase, and his impoverished ability to supply similarities in an abstract fashion. Right, and that's all the guys from UCLA, isn't it? I think. Yes, and then we get more into the more technical ones. We'll just stop and chat for a second. Yeah. The Gerberger. Yeah, basically he fried his brain. Yes. He did at this time. He served as the chair of psychiatry at the University of California, Los Angeles School of Medicine and the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute. Yeah, that's it. They all work for him. And I've been told by DM by people that Ira M Frank was his personal friend, very close friend of his as well. And he's a witness in Texas trial and examined him. I've read out, and in the other streams, I've read out stuff Ira and Frank said as well. And he's the guy from UCLA. He's meant to be Johnny and West mate, but no one gives a shit. They're all just interested in Manson being connected to Johnny West. You know, everyone just overlooks this. Sorry, just got a smoke for a second. Wow, yeah, these are heavy to put together because, well, I don't know if I've shown you. This is the psychiatry report printed out. Oh, I've got to hold it up so you can see the thickness of it. Can you see that? How many pages there are? These are back to back in the folder. It's very, very big. And like I've got notes and I can go through the digital version and I'm taking screenshots of the digital version. But there's a lot to read through to find out all this. And I find all of it interesting. So I'm trying to think of, how to narrow it down to just the vital points to tell people, basically. The most interesting stuff. Yeah, that's it. Well, probably hadn't had time yet as well, had it? Because he was, like I say, I suspect he was drugged again. Either he took drugs intentionally himself, because once he was in California, he was able to get drugs in prison again, or someone nefariously drugged him in order to mess him up. So he'd have to go back to some hospital so they could get him into UCLA. If you're looking for like CIA things, because it is weird how he's behaving normally up until the 25th of September. And when he first goes to court, he's talking to the judge. It's just after the 25th. So when he goes back on the 28th, he won't talk to him anymore. And is just grinning at him and gripping the bar. Yeah. Yeah. His brain was basically pickled. I love the brain for the thumbnail that I found. Yeah, I wish I'd found that earlier. For the other slideshows, the brain staggering along, dribbling, describes this situation perfectly, basically. Oh, and let me just show you this. I won't read this out, but I'll make sure the link is in the description later for if you're watching this on. But organic brain syndrome, basically, it's a group of conditions, neurocognitive disorder, and it's basically a new condition that occurs where you get problems with your memory, changes in behaviour, difficulty understanding language, or trouble performing daily activities, and it's usually brought on by something like dementia or a head injury. Is this on the screen? It is, isn't it? No, it's not. There you go. It's usually brought on by something like dementia or a head injury, basically. But it can be brought on by drug abuse. And that's the headline of this. I'll make sure this is linked for people that are interested in more advanced stuff. But it's quite rare for it to be caused by drug abuse. So it shows how bad his drug abuse was. And if people are interested in more advanced psychiatry stuff, I found this article from the American Journal of Psychiatry about male criminals with organic brain syndrome, 2 distinct types based on age at first arrest. And technically, Charles Watson's is his one for intoxication, which is when he gets the organic brain syndrome. But he's a late starter because he's older than 19. If you're interested in that, I'll put this down below as well. If you are interested in psychiatry, I won't bother to read it all out to you because it's quite boring. If you're not into psychiatry, I find it all fascinating. Yeah, I'll make sure that's all linked below. People that aren't interested in the more advanced stuff. And like I say, his whole report is quite easy to find online now, if you want to read it in more detail. No, well, when it's caused by drugs, you can recover from it as well. That's the thing. As long as you stop doing drugs, your brain can recover from it. And he probably already was because he had been off drugs for ages, hadn't he? But I suspect he was drugged again, basically. He either deliberately took drugs on his own or was drugged by someone. Yeah. You have orgasmic brain syndrome. Yeah. Right, and I always reading this stuff out because we get more to the nitty-gritty. Right, this is AR Tweed again. In reviewing the psychological test results, the EEG and the neurological examination, there is ample evidence to indicate organic brain disease, impaired intellectual functioning, diffuse brain damage from EEG. He continues depressed at this time. In response to the court's questions, I am of the opinion that 1, the defendant was legally insane at the time of the commission of the alleged offences, McNaughton's, in the state that he was so brainwashed, desensitized and programmed that his drug-bathed brain could not provide him with sufficient mental capacity to know and understand that what he was doing was wrong in violation of the rights of others. He is presently sane within the purview of Section 1368 PC, and that he is able to understand the nature and purpose of the proceedings taken against him, and is able to now cooperate with counsel in a rational manner in presenting a defence. 3, at the time of commission of the alleged offences, while he did have the mental capacity to form the specific intent to commit murder, this was only because he had been brainwashed, programmed and desensitized to believe that such acts in themselves were not wrong and what he was doing was right. At the time of the commission of the alleged offences, he did not have the mental capacity to deliberate, premeditate or to harbour malice for the above reasons previously stated. At the time of the commission of the alleged offences, the defendant did not have the mental capacity to meaningfully and maturely reflect upon the gravity of his contemplated acts, because of the acute intoxicating effects of psychosomatic drugs on his diffusely damaged, chronically drug-intoxicated brain. Basically, so and so he says on both because in America at this time as well they had to prove that you could reasonably and maturely reflect, which is basically about your mental age. So did his mental age match his physical age? But this guy is saying that because of the drug intoxication, he wasn't even capable of maturely reflecting upon his actions at the time. So yeah, he says he's not sane on both counts, basically. Hello, Glasgow Dave. That's it. Interestingly, George's UCLA files are still not online, even though Tomo had to wait to go box by box because they were supposed to be scanning them to put them online. Yeah, you can read like an index of them, but you still have to go and look at them. Yeah, to actually see them. I find that crazy that they haven't been put online yet. Yeah. Right, and I'll get on with the next one. So did everyone basically follow that? So he basically said that he didn't believe that the guy was sane, but he's fallen very much for the helter-skelter thing that he was so brainwashed by Manson. That was why. So they're basically saying that's why he was insane. And this is Joel Fort. This is the guy that's for Bugliosi. And I am going to do additional streams because I don't want to give too much information in the streams, like information overload sort of thing. But this guy, there's flaws in his report as well. But this is the guy that Bugliosi quotes and who was, employed by Bugliosi. So Joel Fort, and he just interviewed me at the county jail. His conclusion was taken into account of all the background information made available and sought out by me, as well as my direct examination of the defendant, the total pattern of behaviour exhibited, as well as the thoughts and actions expressed by Watson. I conclude he was sane at the time of the offences in knowing what he was doing and understanding that society considers it wrong to kill. Although his specific and general behaviour and lifestyle are not such that they would be considered normal, mature or healthy in terms of a psychiatric standards, Watson probably had no mental illness at the time of the crimes that would prevent him from forming a specific intent to perform murder. He demonstrated the mental capacity to deliberate, to premeditate, to hypermalice, and to meaningfully reflect upon the gravity of his actions to the extent that he knew what the result would be for his victims and what it could be for himself if caught. The killing showed malice aforethought, in that the defendant showed an intention to kill his victims, and this intention precedes the act of killing. If further questions arise, please feel free to contact me at the above address. So yeah, Joel Fort said he was sane. So this is one of the guys that found him sane, basically. Because these are quite short, I'll skip on to the next one. K. Grosvenor Bailey. Now this guy examined him quite a lot of detail, right? And so his conclusion's a bit more lengthy. But yeah, he says a lot about the killings to him, and that's in the other stream that I've already done about what he said about the killings. Right. So this is his conclusion, basically. And this guy just saw him at the county jail. Examiner's note: conclusions. On the basis of material available to this examiner, and for the reasons set forth in this monograph, I believe the defendant is presently legally sane. The defendant, at the time of the commission of the alleged offences, was legally sane, in that he had sufficient mental capacity to know and understand what he was doing, and second, he did know and understand that it was wrong, and in violation of the rights of another. In this examiner's opinion, there is no question that he had and will continue to have, to some degree, until he is removed from the circumambient milieu of the family and his present predicament, the psychosis known as folie à deux, and he will also continue to malinger for the purpose of personal gain after his own defence. And he has done when the occasion has required to fool his arrest, and certainly since his extradition, psychosis or no psychosis. Yeah, there's typing errors in this; it's hard to read it. In this examiner's opinion, the defendant has more than learned his lesson, and I believe that in the environment of his family at home in Copeville, he would again be able to cope. He certainly is unable to cope now. The problems will still remain as to whether, in a permissive environment, he might again, by pure happenstance, as occurred in the present experience when he came to California and just happened to pick up a hitchhiker who took him to the home where he met Mr. Manson, might again recur to his everlasting detriment. The state of his physical health is still precarious due to the combination of his dietary, his malingering, and his folie à deux. The defendant is presently able to understand the nature and purpose of proceedings taken against him. 6. He is presently able to cooperate in the rational manner with counsel and is presenting a defence. provided his physical strength and hope of being heard would give him stamina and motivation sufficient to do so. 7. The defendant is presently unable to prepare and conduct his own defence in a rational manner without counsel. 8. The defendant, at the time of the commission of the alleged offence, did have the mental capacity to form the specific intent to commit murder. 9, 10, and 11. The defendant, at the time of the commission of the alleged offences, did have the mental capacity to deliberate and premeditate and to harbour malice. 12. The defendant, at the time of the commission of the alleged offences, did have the mental capacity to meaningfully and maturely reflect upon the gravity of his contemplated acts. Right, so this guy said he was sane, basically. Yeah. And then I think we're on to the last slide, so I might as well read out. Yes, this one makes me laugh. Right. This is Keith Ditman. I think this guy is actually a witness in court as well. And interestingly, this guy gets used in one of Leslie's other trials as well. And he looked at Leslie during the first trial, he says. But that's not relevant to this right now, but just an interesting fact about Ditman. At the time of the crimes in question, Watson was suffering from the following: the psychosis of folie à deux, acute and chronic organic brain syndrome, drug-induced, psychological toxicity due to chronic and acute drug use, a severe passive-dependent, inadequate personality structure that made him susceptible to stress and suggestion. All of these conditions seriously impaired his ability to premeditate or maturely reflect upon his actions and their consequences before, at the time of, and after the offences in question. Although the drug ingestion started as a willful act on his part, the psychosis of folie à deux was not willful. This occurred as a happenstance of the confrontation of Manson's dominant personality and psychotic philosophy with his, Watson's, passive-dependent, inadequate personality and non-directional life orientation. At present, Watson shows residuals of organic brain syndrome and the psychosis of folie à deux, as well as passive-dependent, inadequate personality. But I do not feel he is now psychotic or unable to cooperate with his lawyers for his defence. So basically, he was such a passive, codependent pussy that he was dominated by Manson, basically. That was his defence. That's basically what the guy's saying there. He just had such a weak, easily dominated personality that he was an absolute pushover for Manson, along with all the drugs he'd done, basically. That's it. Yeah, this is it as well. And he never mentions any of this as well. He talks about Rosina. He never names her, but he talks about Rosina. But he never mentions the Bernard Crow thing or out like that. So he's sane enough to know not to talk about that sort of shit, But he talks quite a lot about living with a woman who supported him, because they ask him to do a timeline of where he was, all the time, from when he left Texas. And he talks about living with her. Because initially he moved in with Dean, but then he went off to Vietnam and he was left alone with Rosina, basically, yeah. 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 Right, only like 48 minutes, so that wasn't too bad, actually. Yeah, that's everything read out now, I think. Yes, that's the final slide. So yeah, did that make sense to everyone, though, basically? That's all that matters. So basically, most of the psychiatrists said he was insane, but there was 2 that said he was sane, basically. And he was allowed to plead insanity, but they didn't buy it, basically. He still got sentenced to death. And then when the death penalty got overturned, they all got commuted to life, didn't they, basically? Yeah. Yeah, that's it. His dad was so weak, basically. Yeah, they criticize. They say his mother was dominant as well. Like I say, I'll go into other parts of the psychiatry report in another stream. So I just don't want to overload you with too much information all at once. But yeah, they do say stuff about his mother being domineering. And there's points when he can't talk about his father without crying and stuff like that. You know what I mean? He's got really messed up issues with his parents. Yeah. He wasn't, though, really. He wasn't actually popular with them. And out of all the time he was in California, he's admitted now he only spent 6 months with Manson. And they made him sleep in a tent with the creepy priest. They didn't really like him that much there. And he caused all that trouble with Bernard Crow, All that sort of thing. So he wasn't really Manson's right-hand man. That's a fucking fabrication, you know, just to make the story sell more books or whatever, cover up the truth a bit. That sort of thing. He actually wasn't that in with with Charles Manson, or that influenced by Charles Manson. Like when he ripped off Bernard Crowe, Manson told him to go back and sort it out, and he refused. That doesn't sound very like mind controlled, does it? And like he was an obedient robotic servant of Manson. He went, no, I won't go back. And Manson had to go and sort it out. You know, so he doesn't sound very controlled by Manson, really, does he? Total Bubba's boy. Right out at the beginning, didn't I? While he was in jail in Texas, his mum was still doing his laundry for him and bringing him cottage cheese and grape juice and prune juice. And they were visiting him twice a week. Yeah, that's it. They used him. They put him to work because his dad had a garage as well as a petrol station, so he knew how to fix cars, so he's good for making dune buggies. That's it. Texan season actually brought the heat to the ranch. They were fed up with him. Yeah. Yeah, if you're not ahead of this, it's crazy to see so much. We need to talk more about the guys like Tex and Bobby, because there's so much that people don't realise about them. And he's lied himself in books. The books, you know, he probably can't remember a lot about the actual crimes, but he must be able to remember the years before and the shit he was doing. He must know what he did, you know what I mean? And he's stayed silent about all that. That's it. Yeah, he was drinking prune juice in his early 20s, yeah. But he was 25 by now, so he's mid-20s. And, well, like I say, I didn't go into too much detail about his eating problems, but he complains, yeah, that he can't eat anything oily, can't eat anything too sweet, can't stomach certain things, because his weight, that is low for a guy his height, 118 pounds. I mean, I weigh 130 pounds. You know, so don't think he's not that tall. He's only about 6'2", but he's taller than me, you know, and it's not right for a man to be lighter than I am, yeah. Yeah, that's it. He was very regular. Oh, God, and they're going about him having hemorrhoids as well. He has to have sitz baths because he's got such bad hemorrhoids as well. And so I wonder if that, or like, was he still getting pimped out in prison or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Is that what was causing this painful condition that he was having to have sitz baths for? Yeah, that's it. And Linda, well, it's debatable whether Linda ever met them before as well, because Tex spent time away from the ranch and she was around them all. She was at Harold True's house, which is the house next door to the LaBiancas, and she may have met them there. And there's several things I've found where people say they remember seeing Charles Manson with Linda Kasabian way before she's meant to have been with them. But I wonder if it's just mistaken identity. It was another one of the girls, and they just thought it was Linda, you know. But weird, you know, things where it's like Manson she knew them all sooner. Like, I wonder if she met Tex at an earlier stage, and they're just not telling us, you know. Yeah. Inbred and corn-fed. But yeah, because you see I found all the pictures of him, you know, like from his high school yearbooks and his prom photo and that, and he does just give off serial killer vibes his whole life. I've never seen one so damning. Like the pictures of the girls all look quite normal in their high school yearbooks, but Tex just gives off the crazy vibes, even when he was younger, to me. Knee injury, weren't it? He avoided the draft because he was in some kind of car accident that fucked up his knee. And because at first he was at university, wasn't he? But then he got in a car crash that fucked up his knee. That was how he avoided the draft, apparently, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they just met on the Sunset Strip on the scene. And another thing, yeah, that's covered up as well. Tex was actually at Dennis Wilson's house before Charles Manson met him. Like in all Tex's books, and when you see Tex talking about this, he talks like when he got to Dennis Wilson's house, he met Charles Manson there straight away. But actually, Charles Manson arrived at Tex's house, Dennis Wilson's house after Tex. So Tex was there for some time before Manson got there. So Tex might have seen stuff happen at Dennis Wilson's house that Manson didn't see. So that could be something else that's being covered up. He could know stuff about Dennis Wilson that even Manson didn't know. And shit like that. You know, we don't know, do we? Mm-hmm. Before then, well, it would have been because he was at university, wasn't he? You didn't have to go if you were at university, did you? And he transferred to California University at first, didn't he? And then he dropped out and had a car crash and fucked up his knee and became a wig salesman and picked up Dennis Wilson as a hitchhiker, apparently. Yeah, right. And Dennis Wilson moved him into his pool house. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. In college, it was deferred because he was in college. Well, that is. No, yeah, that is the drug burn theory in a nutshell. Is that Tex and Linda directly had a grudge against Frykowski, yeah, and Folger over MDA, and yeah, there is a lot of evidence that Frykowski was supplying people with MDA, though there is no direct evidence that he ever supplied Linda and Tex. But that is thought to be, yeah, what they were angry about. You know, I think he was his most likely right hand. Well, the most useful ones that for violence and for knowing how to use guns and stuff like that would be the guys like TJ, who had been in wars, so knew how to fire guns. So, like guys like that, they were the scary ones, weren't they? The ones that you hear less about. And I heard something recently that suggests that it might be Clem was the person he took up to CLA Drive with him as well. Apparently, Clem had some kind of comment about the condition of the bodies before anyone had been arrested and all that, before anyone could have known, you know, unless they had been to the crime scene. So I wonder now if it was Clem that he took with him. But yeah, the real right-hand men will be the ones that were the bikers and the ex-soldiers and that, won't they? They'll be the most useful ones for violent robberies and shit like that. And that's why he apparently took TJ to Bernard Crow's, because Charlie didn't know how to use guns. He was more used to using knives in the prison yard. He didn't know how to use a gun. So he took TJ for that reason. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the knee injury didn't stop him climbing the telephone pole and delivering flying karate kicks and running around frantically. That's it. If he did really cut the phone wires, though, or did someone else cut them later as they were staging it to make it look like intruders break in? Yeah, that's it. Zero did. Zero had been in Vietnam as well, hadn't he? So would have known how to use guns. And the variety of guns they busted them with, and that Spahn Ranch raid as well. They had tons of guns. It's quite crazy how many guns they had. Which makes me think they weren't all for them. They were running guns, you know. It was like a place guns were held before they were moved on. And maybe that's what the fleet of dune buggies was all about, you know, riding out into the desert to do deals with guns and drugs and that sort of stuff. That's what they were really doing, going out into the desert. Yeah. So we were saying TJ was in Nam as well, wasn't he? And some of them had probably been in Korea as well, hadn't they? The slightly older bikers. Yeah, long time to avoid the draft. Well, a lot of people appear to have as well. And he had a brother as well. There was a weird thing about not sending brothers, wasn't there? But I don't think his brother ever got sent either. Why didn't his brother get sent? His brother was a police officer, I think. Was there a reason why they would have kept you back if you had an important job or something like that? But yeah, I know there was a thing about not sending brothers, both brothers at the same time and stuff like that, wasn't there? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and they had guns and dune buggies for growing marijuana. And if you read Squeaky's book, she talks about, yeah, they had a jar of cannabis seeds and they grew them everywhere, yeah. Yeah. You're in Cheltenham, yeah. Yeah. Lawyers, guns and Manson. Yeah, and I didn't realise Ronald Hughes was involved with them beforehand as well when Manson was making record deals and that, before all the arrests So Ronald Hughes probably knew shit about them that they didn't want getting out. Crazy stuff. The more you read, you find out there's so much that they try and hide, so many connections that they don't want you to know about. So you have to really dig to find the stuff, Right, this has been going exactly an hour now. So I might end this and go to an after show because I've read out everything. Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. And yeah, sorry that it's no longer going out to Facebook. I don't know if that's affected the amount of viewers I've had overall. But hopefully, yeah, people eventually work out they have to come to YouTube now to watch it. Right, and this will be back up tomorrow when I've edited it. So yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. And I'll start up again in a minute with an after show. Yeah, thanks for coming. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And good night.